This is the Xfinity Mobile Arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's had as many different names as it's had major WWE events. WrestleMania has been here, Royal Rumbles have been here, Survivor Series has been here, Raw, SmackDown, NXT, and plenty of other WWE shows have been here too. No other promotion has run this building. I'm Alex, and in today's video, episode 8, I'm counting down my personal top 10 wrestling moments in Xfinity Mobile Arena history. The arena sits in South Philadelphia's sports complex, right near Citizens Bank Park and Lincoln Financial Field, homes of the Phillies and Eagles. That whole area has been Philly's sports hub for a long time, going back to when JFK Stadium stood there, along with the Spectrum and Veterans Stadium. Xfinity opened in 1996 as the Core State Center on the site the JFK Stadium used to call home. It replaced the Spectrum as the main indoor home for the NHL's Flyers and the NBA's 76ers. The Spectrum had serious wrestling history of its own, and I'll cover that building in a future episode. Since opening, it's gone through the corporate naming rights carousel like many other arenas have. It opened as the Core State Center, then it was the First Union Center, then the Wachovia Center, later the Wells Fargo Center, and now Xfinity Mobile Arena. Its current name might end up being the last one for this place, though. As things stand now, a new arena is planned in South Philadelphia on the former Spectrum site, and this building is expected to be demolished after its replacement opens. Now, on to the list. I'm going to start this episode with an honorable mention. Chelsea Green's Cactus Jack-inspired attire from her street fight against Michin on the March 7th, 2025 episode of SmackDown. Chelsea's a goddamn national treasure. I realize she's Canadian, but hang with me. I'm a huge fan of how she maximizes her TV time, and this was a perfect example. Philly has that hardcore wrestling connection. Cactus Jack was one of my favorites, and Chelsea showing up in the flannel and cactus-style gear was exactly the kind of small detail I appreciate. It can't crack the top 10, but I couldn't leave it out completely. At number 10, Batista beats King Booker to win back the World Heavyweight Championship at Survivor Series 2006. These two were in completely different places in 2006. Batista was trying to win back the title he never lost. He had to relinquish the World Heavyweight Championship in January because of injury, and that happened in this same arena. Booker T, meanwhile, won King of the Ring, became King Booker, and somehow made the whole royal gimmick work. The robe, the accent, Queen Charmel, the court. I loved it. In the end, Batista used that big gold belt to his advantage behind the referee's back and pinned Booker to end the King's reign. This was a solid show overall, and with Batista and King Booker both being two of my favorites at the time, it had to make the list. I also thought both guys looked great with that belt, which probably helps this one for me. At number 9, I'm going with Extreme Rules 2019 as a full show moment because it has two very different reasons to stick out. Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch had just beaten Baron Corbin and Lacey Evans in the main event. Corbin hit Becky with the End of Days, Seth snapped, and Rollins and Becky finally got the win. It felt like the show had its closing image. But Brock Lesnar had other plans. The briefcase was handed off to the referee, who of course took his time to walk it over to the timekeeper. Brock threw Rollins around, hit the F5, and Seth's Universal title run was over in seconds. Earlier on in the show, Undertaker had one more big arena moment in Philadelphia. He teamed with Roman Reigns against Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre in a no-holds-barred tag match. It's notable for me, and it's on my list, because this match ended up being Undertaker's final live crowd match in the United States. After a coast-to-coast with a trash can from Shane O'Mac, Undertaker sat up, chokeslammed Shane, and also chokeslammed Elias, who'd interfered earlier in the match. Roman cut off McIntyre with a spear, and Taker finished Shane off with the tombstone. Add in Brock cashing in at the end of the night, and Extreme Rules 2019 has more than enough for this spot. At number 8, Roman Reigns wins the 2015 Royal Rumble, and Philly wants absolutely no part of it. It's here because it became one of the most famous crowd rejections in modern WWE history. Roman was being pushed hard, but WWE had still not gotten him over as the next top babyface. Daniel Bryan being eliminated earlier in the match made things worse, and once the crowd turned, WWE never really got the room back. By the time Big Show and Kane were tossing out fan favorites like Dolph Ziggler and Dean Ambrose, the building was done with the entire match. Roman won by last eliminating a sneaky Rusev. Even with the presence of The Rock, who'd come to the ring to help the big dog fight off Big Show and Kane, the crowd still booed as the final boss raised Roman's hand after the match. Before the tribal chief and before the bloodline, there was this moment. It's not a happy moment, but it's one of the defining modern WWE memories I have from this building. At number 7, I'm putting both 2018 Rumble wins together. Asuka won the first ever Women's Rumble. The women's division had already been changing for a number of years, and it was past time that roster had their own version of the match. The final sequence with Nikki Bella on the apron gave the match the kind of close call a first-time Rumble needed, and Asuka kicking Nikki off the apron made history. At least until Rowdy Ronda Rousey made her WWE debut. I do think Ronda's arrival overshadowed Asuka's win a bit more than it should have. Asuka had just won the first Women's Rumble, but the final image from that night that most fans remember is Ronda pointing at the WrestleMania sign. On the men's side, Shinsuke Nakamura last eliminated Roman Reigns, which gave the finish an extra charge in this building. 3 years earlier, the same city completely rejected Roman's Rumble win that I just covered. This time, Nakamura dumping Roman out gave Philly the ending it wanted. Nakamura pointing towards the WrestleMania sign and choosing AJ Styles felt like the perfect finish to his first year on the main roster. We won't talk about that WrestleMania match, though. At number 6, CM Punk taunts The Undertaker with Paul Bearer's urn during the WrestleMania 29 build, from Monday Night Raw on March 25th, 2013. This is one of those segments where you can feel just how uncomfortable the heat is supposed to be. Punk was headed into WrestleMania trying to end the streak, and by this point the feud centered around Paul Bearer's real-life death and the power of the urn. On this Raw in Philadelphia, Punk came out with Paul Heyman and the urn, talked about ending the streak at 20-1, and treated that urn like a prop he could use to control the whole feud. Then, the lights went out. When they came back on, Taker was in the ring and went straight after Punk. Punk escaped with Heyman, but the segment had already done its job. It made the WrestleMania match feel uglier, more personal, and less like a standard streak challenge match. Punk wasn't just trying to beat the dead man. He was trying to make him lose control before the match even happened. Classic CM Punk head games. This version of Punk stands out to me because little did we know at the time, he would be in his final year with the company. We're halfway home, and at number 5, Jeff Hardy pulls off one of the great SmackDown upsets of the early 2000s, from the April 10th, 2001 episode of SmackDown. Triple H came in as the IC champion, and he was already aligned with Steve Austin during the early two-man power trip stretch. I actually really liked those two guys together. Jeff Hardy was still mostly viewed as one half of the Hardy Boys. Fans knew Jeff had something different. He had the look, the risk-taking, the connection with the crowd, and that feeling that every match could include something wild or dangerous. But he wasn't being positioned as the guy who should be beating Triple H for a singles title. That's why this was so cool. Late in the match, Matt Hardy ran in and cracked the game with a chair. Jeff went up top, hit the Swanton Bomb, and pinned Hunter to win the Intercontinental Championship. Props to Hunter here for putting him over. It wasn't a WrestleMania main event or a Royal Rumble win, but for the fans in the building, that had to have been a great one to say they saw it live. At number 4, I'm going to go with the 2004 Royal Rumble as a full event pick. This one has two big pieces. Chris Benoit winning the Rumble from number 1, and Triple H versus Shawn Michaels in a brutal last man standing match for the World Heavyweight Championship. I'm going to start with the Rumble. Benoit entering at number 1 and winning the match was historic. At the time, only Shawn Michaels had won the Royal Rumble from the first entry spot. Benoit lasted more than an hour, fought through the entire field, and finally eliminated Big Show to win. The final elimination is still a great wrestling visual. Big Show looked impossible to move, almost like a giant refrigerator. Hell, he's probably bigger than a giant refrigerator. Benoit kept hanging on, and he finally dragged him over the top rope. Historically, it is one of the biggest Rumble wins ever. The other reason 2004 belongs here is Triple H versus Shawn Michaels. Their last man standing match was exactly what their feud had become by that point. Personal, bloody, dramatic, and completely exhausting by the end. Triple H was the champ, Shawn was still chasing him. Both guys had the glory days of DX in their rearview mirrors, and neither guy could put the other away. The finish was a draw, which usually annoys me, but here I think it made sense. Both guys had been beaten down so badly that neither could answer the count. Hunter kept the title, the reign of terror continued, and the whole thing felt unresolved in the right way. Between the Rumble win and Triple H versus Shawn, this is one of the biggest full pay-per-views the building ever hosted. At number 3, Edge beats Rob Van Dam and John Cena in a triple threat match on Raw to win the WWE Championship, from July 3rd, 2006. This episode of Raw is hilarious, by the way. One of the more all-time favorites on my list. It's the episode where DX overtook the production truck and told the world about Vince McMahon's love of roosters. Already the ECW champion, RVD had just won the WWE Championship from John Cena at ECW One Night Stand at the Manhattan Center in New York City. That was already one of the wildest crowd reactions of the decade. Cena wanted the title back, Edge was always waiting for the right opening, and Raw put all three of them together here in the ring in South Philly. In real life, Rob Van Dam had been arrested 2 days prior in southern Ohio. After being stopped for speeding, the Ohio State Patrol found additional controlled substances that Van Dam was in possession of. He was suspended for 30 days in accordance with WWE's wellness policy, so it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that he'd be dropping one or both of those titles on Raw. He'd end up dropping the ECW title the next night to the Big Show. I remember assuming that Cena would win the title here, but Edge, the ultimate opportunist, snuck in and blasted Cena with the spinner belt and pinned Van Dam for the win. I put this on my list in this spot because looking back, I really enjoyed 2006 WWE. If that year had its own Mount Rushmore, these three guys would definitely be included on it if I had my pick. At number 2, Shawn Michaels defends the WWF Championship against Mankind at In Your House Mind Games. This match is one of the best WWF title matches of the 90s, and it happened in this building only a few weeks after it opened. The thing I love about this is how different it feels from a lot of the 1996 WWF stuff. Michaels was still the flashy champion, but Mankind dragged him into a much uglier fight. The announce table bump here is the image that everybody remembers. A belly-to-back suplex from the top rope put both men crashing through the table on the outside. It still looks nasty today. Ultimately, HBK retained after Vader, Sid, and The Undertaker all got involved in this match. Michaels and Mankind gave this building an all-time WWF title match almost immediately after it opened. That alone gets it near the top for me. And now my number 1 moment on this episode is another whole show pick, WrestleMania 15 from 1999. This event represented the peak of the Attitude Era. If you ask me to select one show that captures the biggest players and strangest energy of that period, this would be one of the first ones I'd point to. The show is very 1999. We had the Brawl for All. We had Pete Rose eating a tombstone from Kane while dressed as the San Diego Chicken. Shane McMahon also defended the European Championship against X-Pac, but the bigger story here was Triple H and Chyna turning on DX. The heel turn helped kick Triple H out of the DX lane and push him closer to the main event run he would have later in '99. But the main event here was special. The Rock walked in as the corporate champion, Austin walked in as the people's choice, Vince tried to keep himself involved, Mankind ended up as part of the officiating chaos, and Austin finally hit the stunner to beat The Rock for the WWF Championship. This was the first WrestleMania match between Austin and Rock, and Stone Cold winning the title at WrestleMania is the kind of moment most arenas would build their whole wrestling history around. I also have a personal soft spot for this show. I'd consider 1999 to be one of the best years of my childhood, and a lot of that started with memories of watching this show and faking sick the next day so I could stay home from school and rewatch it on my taped VHS. Alright, that bell means it's time to go home. That's my top 10 list of wrestling moments in Xfinity Mobile Arena history. You know the drill by now. Like, subscribe, and let me know what your biggest Xfinity Mobile Arena moments are. I'm incredibly thankful for all of you who have subscribed already and enjoying the comments in the chat. Next episode, we're off to La La Land to cover one of the newest and most cutting-edge arenas in the United States, the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles. Thanks for the house.